Going to call the Board of Selectmen meeting from March 19th, 2018 back to order. We started tonight's meeting in executive session to discuss union issues with HEA and potential job description changes. No vote was taken. As required by open meeting law, we are informing you that we will be video, audio taping, as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience wishing to video or audio tape must notify the chairman now. Hearing no one, please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Anyone for weekly briefing? Carolyn?
Thanks, Carolyn Carey, the Community Center Director. Just letting you know, I had mentioned before that on April 2nd, the fees for passports will increase to $35 for the acceptance fee. So that is a change from $25. The state sets that. The federal government, we don't have anything to do with it, but it is going up on April 2nd. So if people would like to make plans to come over, just give us a call. We're doing passports Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays. Thanks.
You, Carol. Anyone else for weekly briefing? Public comment and announcement?
Mr. Chairman, first kind of goes backwards a little bit. Again, another big storm for the community, a lot of great work, and I'm glad everybody, I hope everybody has their power on. I know I was out for 2.5 days. The public safety facility was out for 2.5 days. And ironically, the folks that got my house up and running were from Mississippi. They came from all over the country to help us. So I thank them personally, but we had a lot of help here from a lot of different people. Secondly, I would request, because of the storm, I know the board had set some limits on the brush to the dump, but that kind of backed up to the first storm. We're kind of working on storm number 2, number 3, and we have another one coming with I would ask the board consider maybe giving another grace period.
Right. Our intent is to take that up tonight after new business. Go ahead, Larry.
A comment following Norm's, the first on the storm, and the great help we got from electrical companies. There's a cool guy in the paper, Louisiana, whining they left 85-degree weather to come up here. But our DPW, fire, police, everyone, everyone was just did a great job. The only negative I need to bring up is the safe house, Cape Cod Regional Tech, and the communication involved in that is that I have gotten some feedback that some of that they were unaware that was open, and I don't know how you start that because we had no power. A lot of people didn't have phone service, didn't have AT&T. I think I know, Norm, you guys always reassess on emergency management after every event on what went right and what went wrong.
Mr. Chairman, understand that is a regional asset, and in this storm, it was very important because there were a lot of folks from the Mid-Cape Hyannis area came down to us, but it's a regional asset, and you're exactly right. When the power went down, we lost Comcast. If you were an AT&T customer with your cell phone, you lost your cell phone. In today's world, that's how we communicate.
Yeah.
And it also comes down to logistics. The regional REPC has to find people to man that shelter. It comes down to cost, and we have to, it takes a lot to get that going. But it was, I would agree with you, the communication is difficult, and I'm quite frankly, I don't have an answer for you. Maybe earlier, if we can take a chance and get those shelters open early, but that's a regional decision, not a local decision.
Okay, yeah, and Norm, let me finish my thought, because that's one of the thoughts I had is that maybe when you have an imminent storm, you do have to, notify people early, and then if it doesn't come, cancel it so it's available sometime before the power goes off. There may be other solutions, I don't know, but I think it's worthy of discussion.
It is going to be a topic of discussion, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Norm. Anyone else for public comment and announcement?
Ed McManus. I know all of you are aware that the South Harwich Meeting House was open for business this weekend. on Saturday and Sunday, having 4 performances of the Chatham Chorale, which were absolutely magnificent and sold out. And having been the person that all day Saturday worried and obsessed about where everybody was going to park in probably one of the worst parking conditions with piles of white stuff in the way everywhere, we found parking spaces for everybody. And if you could do it on a weekend like this during the summer when it's nice, any events that they have there won't cause a disaster or an overload in the neighborhood. I think it's going to be a wonderful venue for our town.
Great, thank you.
Sharon Flieger, Wastewater Support Committee. I just want to let everybody know there is a meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30. I know it's a little late. I'm going to have to communicate better with Bill because it didn't make the paper this time. I also want to make a note that on April 3rd, it's a Tuesday morning at 8:30, which is one of our meetings, Kendall Ayers from the Barnstable Septic Loan is going to be at our meeting, and he's going to be going over more of the issues that we have, and I did pose some of the questions to him that I hope we can get some answers to. So that's just a heads up.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Scannell. It's my wife, Pam. Been trying to push an idea that will eventually lead up to what I call floating marine laboratories. And this kind of stems from that clam shack or the snack shack. I think the kids should run that. You've probably gotten my note. You've given a letter to the Chatham and Harwich Board of Selectmen and Monomoy and Regional Tech School. So hopefully we're looking down the road at something like a marine technologies educational program for the kids, centered right down there at Saquatucket Harbor, where I grew up. So there's 2 herring runs there. It'd be a nice park situation. Could be easily developed. Not easily. But the main thing I'm pushing to is some reform of the fisheries for Harwich, something I've been working on for decades, that would go with this particular snack shack. The kids could run it. And then it would develop from that seed into eventually down the road a floating marine laboratory where you have a hatchery operation, where Harwich has, let's say, some clout as far as fisheries. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else for public comment and announcement? Consent agenda, Larry?
Mr. Chair, I move the following consent items. A, approve applications by Lanyard Bar and Grill for the following annual licenses: Common Victor, Weekday Entertainment, Sunday Entertainment, and Automatic Amusement, meaning a jukebox. Didn't know they had jukeboxes anymore, actually. Go for it. B, confirm appointment of Kenneth Murphy as local building inspector as recommended. C, authorize town administrator to sign letter of participation for aid-friendly regional assessment with Barnstable County Human Services Department and designate Judy Wilson, COA Director, as point person.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Just to point out, the item A, Lanyard Bar and Grill, is the former Land Ho in Harwichport. Any discussion?
I have one, Mr. Chair. I wonder if, Chris, you might just give us a little more description of C. I know it's in our packet, but just very brief.
Yeah, this
of
came
what
up
that
really
is.
at the last minute, last week, I think even after our meeting, Mr. Chairman, that the county has an opportunity for, I think it was a $137,000 proposal to be able to go out and do a study to, as the name implies, to create an age-friendly regional assessment. So this is actually putting people in coordination and in the ground to actually begin to collect some of that data to see. And in our case, Judy Wilson, acting as the Council on Aging Director, makes a lot of sense that if these folks, the researchers, have to come out and look at something, that they would interact with her to get whatever information that would be needed.
So this is actually determining our needs,
I believe it's an assessment.
an assessment.
Yes.
And then, so we can look forward to how we're doing the best we can.
And how we can do better.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, under public hearings and presentation, we have the Cape Cod Commission update. Christy Sanatori.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here tonight. I am Christy Senator. I'm the Acting Executive Director for the Cape Cod Commission. I've been with the Commission for about 9 years now, the first of which I served in the capacity as the Chief Regulatory Officer, and for the last 5 or so years as the Deputy Director. So I've been in this acting position for about 6 weeks, and so I appreciate the opportunity to come and introduce or reintroduce myself to some of you. And I just wanted to kind of articulate some of my goals for the commission, how we've been coordinating with the town of Harwich and some of the regional initiatives that we're looking at taking up over the next several months. So just kind of in keeping of open communication, I am visiting all 14 boards of selectmen and the Barnstable Town Council over the next few weeks. The snow has kind of derailed that a little bit, so I think this is my 3rd board. So. But certainly if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them tonight, and you can also get in touch with me at any point in the future too, via email or phone. I'm happy to coordinate and communicate. So just kind of walking through some of the priorities that we have. Obviously wastewater comes up as one of the highest priorities that the commission has, that the region has, and we're certainly implementing the Section 208 area-wide water quality management plan that was approved by both the Department of Environmental Protection and the Environmental Protection Agency over the last couple of years. We're in the implementation phase of that project now, and it's really great to report that we really have progress being made in all 15 communities. It's nice to see some of those costs going down, some infrastructure getting put in the ground, and some of the nitrogen issues being remediated. We have been at the table at the Pleasant Bay Alliance discussions, and I really want to commend the town of Harwich for your participation and really forward thinking with the Pleasant Bay Alliance. That's been a model, the intermunicipal agreement that they have going forward, and the plans that they have with those 4 towns is really going to serve as a model for the rest of the Cape. So you should be proud of that work that your staff has been doing through the Alliance. We will be holding our 4th annual One Cape Conference this year. It's going to be in August. And so we'll get back to you with some more of those details once we have them figured out. But that's our plan, is really to update the community on the progress of all 15 communities as we move forward in the implementation phases of the 208 plan. Another piece of information or priority that we're working on, priority project, is the NOAA Coastal Resilience project that we're working on. It's Resilient Cape Cod. We received a grant through NOAA a couple of years ago. We're in year 2 of that project, really looking at coastal resiliency across the Cape. And it's more important, I think, now than ever to study coastal resilience and to come up with strategies that work for our communities on the Cape, strategies that can be implemented at the local level, that are affordable, and that can help preserve our coastline. We have 560 miles of coastline and beaches, and we're more vulnerable now to these storms and impacts of climate change and sea level rise than we ever have been. So we've had a lot of community meetings around coastal resilience, and in the last several months we've actually worked with the town on a multi-hazard mitigation plan, which was approved back in December. So certainly we also commend you for those efforts. I think any strategies the towns can be taking put in place to provide some more certainty in these areas of vulnerability is very important. And then lastly is our regional policy plan. So this is a comprehensive planning document. It's called our RPP, which guides not only comprehensive planning across the Cape, but also our regulatory program. So developments of regional impact that trigger certain thresholds would be reviewed at the regional level. But what we're doing is really a shift in the focus of this regional policy plan update. And rather than looking at parcel by parcel and being reactive to projects that might trigger a certain threshold, we're really looking at these as systems. And so we recognize that Harwich and Brewster and Truro don't need to be regulated the same way that some of the Upper Cape towns do. And so it's really trying to find that balance, looking at infrastructure and trying to figure out where it makes sense to locate growth and development. And if we can locate it in these centers of activity where density might be more appropriate, it might make sense at the regional level to even step out of the way in some of these areas. So So we certainly are working very hard on this update. We intend, it's one of my priority projects, and certainly of the commission also, and we intend to have a draft available by the summer. So certainly we'll be bringing that back to you and out for public comment. So those are some of the highlights I just wanted to articulate briefly. The commission is always available for technical assistance as it's appropriate, and so I'm happy to answer questions either now or at a later date. So
Great, thank you, Christy.
thanks.
Questions for Christy, Dawn? All set? Janelle?
I don't have any questions right now, but maybe you could give your email.
Sure. It's K and then my last name, Senatori, SENATORI, at capecodcommission.org.
Thank you.
Excellent. Julie?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your presentation and updating us. I have a couple questions. I'm interested to hear and see that draft of the density and the changes in the various towns. And changes such as that, what is the process that it has to, be vetted through in order to make those changes?
In order to make the changes to the regional policy plan. There is a staff level review going on internally. We have a core team that's working on that. It will have to go through a public comment period. It will be approved by the Cape Cod Commission, by the Assembly of Delegates, and the county commissioners. So the public comment period would be open to all the boards of selectmen, to anyone in the community that is interested, and we will be holding public hearings in the subregions throughout that public comment period.
And then does it come back to each town to go to town meeting? How does that work?
No, it's a regional document,
Oh,
so it's a
just
regional ordinance.
Okay.
Right.
And also, can you give us any kind of update on Open Cape? Is there any new information on that?
To the extent that I can give you an update, the regional wide area network was a regional initiative that was initially implemented by the Cape Cod Commission, the county of Barnstable, and we worked with Open Cape to put this network together to tie in the community anchor institutions across the Cape. So I think there were about 30 or so connections, give or take. Really trying to set up this municipal ring to provide internet access and internet service. The commission and the county funded that project for the first 3 years. The county decided not to include it in the budget last year, so it wasn't funded, although I do believe that the county is looking to renew that contract in some form and make sure that that service is continued, and make sure that there are opportunities to expand that network through the municipalities and eventually through the last mile. So I can only speak for what the county and the commission are. I know Open Cape is working on other extensions of the fiber.
Okay. And lastly, I know that I think it's Tom Cahere was having a meeting in terms of the bridge work proposed. Do you have any additional?
It's tomorrow morning. I will be there.
Okay.
So certainly I think there'll be a lot of community leaders at that meeting tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Larry?
Thank you, Christy, for the presentation. I think follow up on the density question, I think we're all looking for the way you can help us in smart growth and how we, as a broader subject of density, but also affordable housing, centers. And I like the approach of backing away from regulations, gives us a chance to implement some of those, but also give us guidance on how we move forward with that. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know I give it before Michael does, because our other favorite question is always, how can you help us more so we can save money?
Thank you, Larry. We'll get back to that later.
Sure, that sounds good.
I just beat you to that one.
You do raise a couple of great points, though. In our regional policy plan, we'll have a housing focus and trying to figure out where it makes sense to develop more housing and housing for the missing middle, kind of the working class housing that is kind of missing on the Cape. So we'll have a variety. We have a kind of a monoculture of housing. We have a lot of single family homes. 87%, I think, of our homes are single family. So how can we incorporate more types of housing into the planning that we're looking at? So.
Is that Larry?
Yeah.
Great. Chris?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to kind of publicly say thank you that I know Acela was kind of a big issue and we kind of had some bumps in the road, but I felt, at least from my perspective, that when we reached out to you to see what we could do to work to resolve it, that it was a good partnership, and you and Paul at the time, and that you have been able to extend those resources and make it more continuing to move in the right direction. So I appreciate that. And I do think, Mr. Chairman has in the past mentioned to me about IT and what the county can do, and I know that there was a study done, or the questionnaire that was filled out. I think it would be good to kind of meet with those individual towns and see what those offerings are, where we can collaborate, where it makes sense.
Yep, that's a great idea, and
I know it's the county.
And Harwich is definitely a leader. You really took the lead on the Acela project, and you may have had some bumps in the road, but hopefully you're past some of those, and we're able to work collaboratively to bring more towns onto the system, and so we appreciate that.
Thank you, Christie. Thank you for coming.
I just have a few handouts with some economic statistics I can leave for you.
Great, thank you. Chief?
Mr. Chairman, can I just, a quick comment on Open Cape? We did have some issues with technology and phones in the public safety facility the last 2 storms, and Open Cape has already come in and has already sat with Lieutenant Tilsley to talk about those issues affecting both fire and police in emergency situations. So they have already reached out. They actually came to the station and are going to be a great help.
Great, thank you, Norm. Okay, next up, new business. Job description and advertisement for assistant town administrator position. The advertisement and the description is in tonight's packet. Bob is here to answer some questions. I know Don and Larry met with Bob and went over this. And then at last meeting, when it was announced that we were gonna advertise, I think you both had questions. Chris?
Yeah, actually, you summarized it about what I was going to say, Mr. Chairman. I think we're looking to do, obviously, I need to get this job out and get this advertised and get the recruitment process started. So we have tailored the ad, and I believe that the emphasis and focus that was requested by the board was put into the ad, and that the job description itself meets the requirements. But if that's something that's not, then I think it would be good to have a discussion. But
The job description, I think, is pretty broad, so you can do almost whatever you want without even changing it. The ad, we did make the adjustment so that we didn't eliminate if somebody had a JD degree, to allow, that would be one of the criteria. Your job description now requires a BA. I doubt if you're gonna hire anyone with a BA. There are enough master's degrees in the categories that are listed along with a JD degree that I think will be helpful to you.
Great, thank you, Bob. Larry, I'm gonna start with you.
Okay, I appreciate making it broad enough to include a lawyer, legal help. It wasn't the direction I was going, actually, and we've had discussions here in the board, I think, since I've been here this last time. Probably is it makes sense to have a general counsel to do some of the basic work, help us with contracts, help give legal opinions to our committees that seem to come up, and only funnel those more specific questions, to specific lawyers. And so when we had this position open, the push I made was, the argument I made at the time was, well, this would be a good time to reassess what that position is. Is it a broad position which is basically picks up, almost everything that Chris does, but in a directed way, or should we make that more specific to a specific item? And we had some items we talked about. Legal help was one, IT was one, HR was one. And they're not all commingled. But when I looked at it, I was hoping we would try to direct this towards specifically that general counsel concept, and not as a full-time legal counsel, but that being the skill set coming to the party, and then add to that a lot of the activities that is in the position description now, but have that be a specific function. Maybe that's half the job is doing legal counsel, and the other half doing, the items I talked about in HR. And so I was hoping to have this a little more focused on that concept, with the others being add-on, rather than all the others that being there with a possibility of having legal counsel. So my direction was going a little differently.
Thank you,
My
Larry.
argument.
Yeah, I do think, Mr. Chairman, one of the directions that I had fairly early in the budget process was to have the assistant maybe fill the position at a little lesser of a salary, focus more on HR. take some of the savings from upstairs and that we had in community development, match it up with that to create somebody that would be kind of a legal specialist. The only town that really has, I think, a model that's similar to that is the town of Dennis. In the town of Dennis, I have had an opportunity to talk to my counterpart over there. It's more of a clerical position that kind of has some skill. I don't even want to say a paralegal. I don't believe that they're even a paralegal. But as the budget developed, we didn't have funding to do that legal component. So I think, unless I know the chairman and I have had extensive discussions really over the last 2 years, that we've had the opportunity to work together. And I think what the sense I get that the board is looking for, well, what I think we need is, number one, HR. I think HR is critical. Second is procurement. Let's get the procurement in a better situation. But then, at some point, I'm probably 10 years away from retirement, but at some point you want to have some transition. So you want somebody that will come in that wants to develop into the skill set to be an administrator in their own right. And I think really that's what this ad kind of heads us in the direction of. I'd hate to see a focus that was overly just on legal, because then what that will do is that will mean HR duties will fall more to me. I like what I do a lot of different things, and I do tend to get in more into HR and negotiations, perhaps because I'm pretty good at it. But I think having an assistant to be able to migrate some of that would be in the longer term interest of the community.
Yeah, just one rebuttal, then I'll stop, because I wanted a discussion, overall discussion. I agree with you on a lot of those points. With a legal counsel first, that to me is valuable if it then migrates into the other skill sets, so that we have trainings. Quite frankly, every management position, you want to have someone in the wings waiting as a replacement. And the assistant town administrator should fulfill that spot. So I don't see that as being the only focus. But bringing that expertise as a foundation for the subjects we talked about, the procurement. I got a list that I sent, but it wasn't included in the packet, and also in HR. But I think my direction, my hope was to start that as a foundation and move to those other areas, because I agree they're necessary.
Thank you, Larry. Julie?
Well, and I understand what you're saying. We've talked a lot about in-house counsel, et cetera, but I mean, I saw this position as more focusing on the procurement in HR. My only question would be the way it is general, and I appreciate why it needs to be general, but I guess my question would be, what kind of criteria are we gonna be looking for procurement or HR background? Because we don't really just want somebody who's just dabbled in it. We want somebody who's got the procurement training, and maybe then they have some HR, you know what I'm saying? And so that's my only question or issue, is to sort of have better idea of what we would require for those
I think one thing, I'm just kind of smiling because you're going to be on the search committee. So when 100 resumes come in, you'll get a good sense for what the applicant pool exists out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you certainly will have, as the applicant pool has shown in the past, people that have attorney backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a fair amount. We'll have people that have some HR background. I think we've had a full range, acupuncturists. I mean, you name it, we'll get some people who apply. But I think that we have to see what the applicant pool has. What we want to try to do in the ad is really encourage those people that have that skill set to have something that latches them on to applying.
Okay. All right.
Bob?
I think with the 5 years experience, that's going to weed out a lot, and I think maybe get to some of the things that Mr. Valentine's talking about and then Don's talking about also.
Okay.
But I don't think you're going to be looking at someone, at least in this town, someone right out of graduate school.
Right, okay.
I think you're at a
Gonna
level
get
where you need someone who's had some experience in municipal government, and you do get a smattering of all of those things. And on the procurement, to at least be ready to go to school,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a long school. I mean, I've been through it, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot of months.
Yeah.
Only because a lot of now you have to go to Boston. They do have some local courses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the assistant, when the person starts, will need to use the resources that exist, because you do have, I think, 2 people that are certified. And I don't know that we're using them enough.
Okay.
And there may be a good way to use those folks who are already certified, at least talking about procurement,
Mm-hmm.
to better advantage for the town.
Okay.
You all set?
Yep,
Jeanette?
thanks.
I think it sounded fine. I don't have anything.
Don?
In an odd way, I agree with both Bob and Larry, but in parts. First, let me start out by saying I was a senior contracting officer with the federal government. I had an unlimited signature warrant. However, that didn't mean I could sign any contract I wanted to. There was a systemic thing that was built in. There was legal review, there was programmatic review, and that's the one thing I see absent here. I mean, and Michael has brought this up on a number of occasions. There really isn't like a process. I'm not looking at this position as being necessarily the be-all and end-all in procurement any more than we've got one person with unlimited signature authority. I mean, we've delegated a certain level to the town administrator. The board retains other amounts above that. It's more a question of getting eyes on things so that they're consistent, which gets me to Larry's point. The person who would be in a position to do that would be either overseeing and reviewing the procurement as opposed to performing it, and would probably need to have some sort of legal understanding of the implications of these things. Same thing with HR.
Taking the course.
The exposure in both of those areas is immense, because if you have one contract that goes south on you, or if you have one HR complaint that you get a judgment against you, it costs a lot more than having somebody sitting in an office. And in all deference to the administrator, a clerk level position is really not what I'm looking at. I mean, it has to be somebody that's got the chops to be able to understand the implications legally of where you are with a personnel decision. And frankly, for years, it made no sense to me that it was like constructed like the NFL. The hearing officer was the town administrator, and then the appeals officer is the town administrator. So that's ridiculous.
I just don't like being compared to Roger Goodell, I'm sorry.
He gets paid a lot.
Yeah, he does.
But the point is that there needs to be like some levels of review. I don't see in the constraint of our budget right now that that's possible, but the devil's in the details, not here, but in what you haven't given us, is like what would the weighting formula for the evaluation of the the pool of candidates be? What kind of credit are you giving for legal as opposed to whatever? I don't know the answer, and this certainly doesn't give me that answer. So, but this comes out sounding like a threat, but it's a fact. The charter, the way it reads, you still need to sell 3 of the selectmen on whatever the appointment is, because it's really a recommendation rather than an appointment. So we all have to like dig in and understand, you know, what's important given where we are at this moment. Because ideally, we really do need legal counsel inside, because if you can avoid any one litigation, then we're not paying KP Law big money. We're only asking them to come in when there's something that needs them. We can avoid litigation, that's great. If we can avoid personnel conflicts, that's great. And if we can avoid contracts that are faulty, that's great, because there's big money in all 3 of those areas.
Absolutely.
Do you have a follow-up, Larry?
Only that I did prepare some dot points on the legal and on the HR that was included in the packet. So if I can, I'd like to include that so everyone has access to those dot points. And you know, I wanted to open up this discussion. We all have our preferences. My overall I don't know, philosophy, but I'm more comfortable hiring a specialist making a generalist out of them than I'm hiring a generalist making a specialist out of them. And that's why I'm pushing where I'm going on this, because I think we have a chance to make this. You know, it's already a critical position. Otherwise, Chris is going to die very shortly. Too much work.
Only if we push him off a cliff.
Are you all ready for this? I find myself agreeing with Larry, Don, and Chris. That never happens. So I think it's broad enough. The question I had is it charter-driven that it's only a 35-hour-a-week job description?
You know, these jobs, you know, quite honestly, on paper are 35.
Okay.
But certainly the person that comes in, I would hope, would understand that. I know as a longtime assistant, I understood that it was a,
So secondly, we asked and you graciously accepted that a board member has a seat at the table for the interviewing process.
yes.
I think that that's important based on what Larry's saying. As far as legal, I was the one that suggested that we have in-house counsel. I still believe today that we should have in-house counsel. Looking at our budget, I know we can't have in-house counsel. Procurement, as everybody knows, is a huge thing for me, and the legal that Larry's speaking of, I think if we get a specialist in procurement or somebody really in tune with procurement, we're actually getting a law person, because I think in order to really understand it, contracts the way that they're written for municipalities, you have to have some sort of law. And HR, I'm still convinced that HR doesn't belong in administration. I think that there's two different types of HR. I think that there's the contractual part where you're hiring people and you're going through the interview process, but human resources that people go to for in-house problems or maybe problems with administration, I don't see how administration can actually handle that. So I'll be interested to see how this all pans out, but do agree with Chris that we need to start the process, and to Don's point, if we don't like it, we vote against it, we start from scratch. So, with that, can we, do you want a motion on that, Chris, or we just, okay?
Yeah, I
with-
think that would be appropriate. We'll commence the process of recruitment of the assistant based upon the job description. And you have the ad that we provided, so based upon
With the
those two
focus.
Okay.
as
Can
the
I-
focus.
With the focus.
Can I get a motion on this?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the ad and ask the town administrator to place that ad as the basis for selecting the assistant town administrator.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent, thank you.
Here's some of the points I.
Update of the personnel bylaw compensation and classification plan. Proposed salary adjustments for DPW director and town clerk, support staff supervisor, and executive assistant's job description. And this is titled, or Bob Lawton is gonna give us the explanation on this. So go ahead, Bob.
I'll give you the overview. For the positions, we won't be talking about this evening because we still are bargaining. We have some direction from the board in the executive session. So the two parts to what you'd be asked to do tonight under the personnel bylaw. First would be the salary scales, revised, the M scale, the manager scale, and the revised administrative scale, so-called OA, which I think was on the table. That'd be one vote. The second part was the DPW director and the town clerk, which we did do the research on the market conditions in those two cases. And there was a lot of material provided to you. Some was a little out of date, but I guess this has been going on for some period of time. So we did make a recommendation on the those two positions. And then the third one you'd be talking about tonight is the support staff supervisor. That was brought to you, I think, back in January by Mr. Clark to talk about the reorganization. I think there was general approval on that, but we did, once we did the review, that's the OA scale, which now has a new level in it to accommodate that position and the new duties and responsibilities that go along with it. So I'm happy to answer any detailed question, but that's the overview, and those would be the votes.
Thank
we
you.
would ask you to take.
I guess this one to Chris. The reorg of the support staff supervisor that we did when Bob mentioned that.
Yes.
That came with stipend, I believe.
Yes, what we did previously was we had a stipend. What Bob has done he's gone through and he's actually slotted it, so the stipend would become part of the overall salary. So that would be now built into the salary. And the major component behind that is, I've been wanting to do this, it's a private sector model that I've been trying to bring to the public sector. And we have all the clerical people in the building to basically have a person that they would actually be able to go to for whether it's sick time or whether it's vacation or whether it's issues at their job. And we expanded that person to be able to do upstairs, the community development department, and I think that has worked very well. What this basically does is now expand it downstairs into the finance departments. So what that does, the value for the organization in my mind, is it allows the clerical folks to go to one person and allows management to be able to focus on management tasks. So it's kind of bifurcating some of those responsibilities and putting the responsibilities of clerical administration onto one person that is more skilled in that area.
So the money in the stipend got added to the salary,
Yes, sir.
and
This
now we're
is-
reclassifying it, so it's in addition to,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's
one
all part of
all-encompassing
one.
number.
Yes, sir. There's no stipend involved in this now. It's part of the new job description, new responsibilities, and as Mr. Valentine said earlier, it is necessary, and therefore you do the evaluation and create the salary range to go along with it.
Okay. One thing, Chris, that I'll bring back up, and Larry asked for it a few weeks back or a month back, is an org chart, so that we can get a sense of what is going on and who's working for who, and, but a simple org chart would be,
Yeah, my
would be nice
apologies,
for us to
my
look at.
apologies, we should have had that.
Don, start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, coming off of that comment, what I've been having my trouble getting my head around is this particular person, even a staff chart's not necessarily going to get at that. I'm interested in who gives the job performance evaluation in the end of the year?
It's a combination, so it would be the department head, obviously, that works individually with the staff, and then this person also would sit in the office.
Okay, but since there's physical proximity, I mean, say Board of Health or what, just to pick a
More weight
department.
is given to the department head than to the
All
staff.
right, that answers that. And then in terms of granting leave, I mean, they do that through the department head, so that there's some understanding that next week you're not gonna have an employee there?
Well, one of the issues that we ran into is that each individual department was letting people take time off, and then we didn't have coverage. So there was no coordination. By having this duty be now coordinated, we can make sure we get better coverage at the staff level. So we actually were too decentralized before. This actually allows for better coordination of staffing for people that really are at the window, the key people for the public interaction with the community.
Okay, that's
All set, Don?
Yep.
Janelle?
I don't have anything.
Julie?
So how would this position then interact if, you know, we have somebody working in human resources and in that area? How do those two come together?
I think she's actually, Ann in the office has played more of that role since she's moved upstairs. And I think it's been a great collaboration. So people are more apt to tell her about concerns or problems, and then she brings me in, and at this point, I've been doing more of that. Or in this, as Bob's been here, she brings it to Bob, and then we can intervene at the appropriate time. So some of the the smaller issues, she's able to deal with and handle, and the ones that she believes needs to be triaged up, she's been good about triaging it up.
Okay.
And she has prior experience, kind of working in that type of level of skill job. So she's been a good person to have in this position.
Okay, so you see it molding together as sort of as it is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, I have nothing else.
Larry?
Yeah, I don't have much. I would, in the request for the organizational chart, the reason I asked for that is just not the chart itself, but how they fit together. And this would be actually relates to what Julie asked for. If we got a new position and the skill set's a little bit different we have now, how's that relate with the existing position, so we're functioning as well as we can.
So that takes care of the OA, voting the OA scale, I think. Now let's move on. None of us discussed the M scale, which would be the DPW director. That would be the other. That's why the reason for the.
That's the new one, yes, sir. And then the slotting of the town clerk in the M5,
Okay.
which does not,
So it would be the town clerk and the DPW would
Yes,
be
sir.
the vote on the M.
On the M scale.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the support staff supervisor was the OA.
yes, sir.
And that was the
That's right.
only OA, correct?
That's the only you're dealing with this evening. That was a new category that was created. Yes,
Okay.
sir. The others would stay the same.
All right, Chris, will you just give the board an overview? I had the opportunity, sanctioned by you before anyone gets excited on social media, to meet with Link Hooper and talk about his memo. Can you just give an overview of what's in the packet?
Yeah, I
What
think
is the- I guess
just
this-
before Bob came here, Lincoln Hoover, the DPW director, had provided some information. He looked around to see what his counterparts are making, And, he is really, in my opinion, really a credit to the organization, and he recognized that he is significantly below the average of what his counterparts in smaller communities even were receiving. So he did do some initial legwork to show that. I think he is willing, similar as other people in this organization are willing, to kind of gradually move up over time to become more in the range of his neighboring DPW directors. So with that information, when Bob came on, I've been having him do a lot of HR, so I asked Bob to go through the information that Mr. Hooper, Lincoln had provided, and just make a determination of his own, looking at it from a fresh set of eyes, and to come back with a recommendation. So what you have before you is that recommendation, and I'll turn it over to Bob for the due diligence.
And he would be slotted in the M9 category at step 5, which is close to where he would have been. It's about $2,000 difference, but it gives him, in this case, the ability to go through additional steps. And it does make us competitive, I think, with the other communities that are similar size entities.
So Bob, reslotting him would add $2,000 plus the contractual increase that he's already getting, correct?
Yes, sir.
The
Anything
2%,
that-
yes, is
Right.
built in.
So it's 2,000 this year plus for FY19. It starts in FY19, correct, Chris?
It does,
Yeah.
July 1st.
$2,000 plus the 2% that he's already in.
Just to be perfectly clear, and that's a great question, right now, he is at max.
Right.
So
Yes,
he only receives, if the schedule goes up, he's at step 10, the schedule goes up 2%, he only gets 2%. By regrading him to a higher level, would you say step 6?
5.
Step 5. So at step 5, the 2%, if the overall scale moves 2%, but then he also gets the change, so it's the cost of living, and then it's also the step increase. So he would get, and it's the process of doing those step increases over the next 5 years that would bring that position more competitive with other ones that are in the neighborhood.
And if memory serves me correct, this is exactly what we did for the fire chief and police chief?
It is exceptionally very similar.
Okay.
They're I want to say they're unique unto themselves. They have their own individual employment contracts, so they don't have the 10-step program,
Okay.
10-step scale. Sorry. But the 10-step scale, so in this case, Lincoln was already in the scale, so we just kept him in the scale and adjusted the scale.
Okay. To correct the process somewhat. Yes, sir.
So the cost to this in the FY19 budget, total cost to this for FY19 budget is what?
$2,000
$2,000.
That's it?
for that. Yes, sir. And that would be contained within the budget of the DPW.
Okay. And the reason I ask is, we still haven't voted the budget. We still have a lot of issues with the budget. We're still waiting to hear from the Finance Committee on the budget. So I'd hate to vote this and then vote down part of the budget at the same time.
Exactly.
With that, I'm going to open it up to Julie first.
I don't have any questions. I mean, I understand, and I think it goes back to discussions we've had before, which is that we need to make sure we're able to maintain our staff and not lose them, and certainly the DPW director is a hard worker, so I want to make sure I reflect that. And it looks to me that, again, the 2,000 is the top increase, and if he's M9 step 5, right? That's
Yes.
where
Step
he
five,
would
yes.
be.
The
And then-
18-2.
Right,
And
so
we are
that,
creating a new scale, a new element on the scale
So
by having
he
that
conti-
M9, so,
but that would be the total, the 118.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah,
because
no,
there is no longevity at that point
That
since he's not at the max.
Right, okay.
Larry?
Yeah, this actually fits one of the things I've been preaching for a while, and that we consider salary over here and position description here. And Link has explained that he's added responsibility since position description was, that he's working under now, was written, namely the vehicle maintenance and and those activities. And so there is an expansion of in his position description. So and $2,000 is in the budget. I'm for moving ahead.
Janelle?
I don't have anything.
Don?
On just the DPW?
Yeah.
As far as the DPW goes, again, Larry's right. There's a difference between the position and the person who occupies it. But You got a guy who has a master's degree in public administration, and we've added building maintenance and vehicle maintenance
Right.
to it. So, and this is the discussion we did have on that Saturday, if anybody wants to sit down and watch YouTube for 6 hours. The budget discussions. If everybody centers on a discussion about what other towns make, and that's where we go, we don't look all that good. But then again, relative to positions in the town, we've got to be able to articulate who's got what responsibilities, and are they competitive with other people in other jobs that have either more or less authority? And I'm pretty satisfied that this does that.
Okay. All right, the last one on the list then is the town clerk's position, which, Chris, will you just give us the same
Yeah,
general
just
overview?
on this, and I did have a lengthy discussion actually at the Finance Committee, so I do have just at least from my standpoint, the town clerk came and said, well, you've evaluated a lot of people in the managers. As the board's aware, we have a part of the agreement with the managers union is that we go through SEIU and look at the positions. And she goes, why shouldn't I be looked at like anyone else? So with that as the auspice, we did start to look into that. I think Bob did a little bit more of some of the legwork. And what we came out with is that we try to have where the town is not, if there's 14 or 15 communities, where we're not, number 14 or 15. We want to be somewhere in that mid-range, number 6 or 7, to have that position be in that. And what we found on the town clerk's position is that the position was low and that it should be a higher level. So we did that due diligence. The one question that kind of came up that I wasn't really fully anticipating is this is the only full-time salaried professional position that's elected. And the question was, how do we take that into account when we want to put somebody in? So let's say Anita at some point will retire and we have an opening for the position. And 2 people run for office. One has 1 year experience, the other one has 10 years experience as a town clerk. Right now, the way we do business and the way we constructed the warrant, there's one number. So you have one person with 10 years experience that would make, X number of dollars, and somebody with 1 year experience would make the same amount. So in this case, I think the second part, which is kind of more of a charter question, is by specifically saying to town meeting that we want to have that position slotted in the M scale, that in that example that I gave, if Anita retires and 2 new people run and one person runs and gets it and is 10 years experience, wins the election, then the slotting of where that person starts would fall to the administrator to figure out, okay, based upon years of experience, where does that position fall? And why is that? The charter specifically says, whether I like it or not, the administrator acts as the personnel director for the community. So we would do the professional standard that we would do for anybody. If somebody had 1 year experience, wins the election, then generally what we do is put them at step 1 because they have that 1 year experience. So I think that this kind of does 2 things that we're attempting to accomplish with the way this has been constructed. One is, how do we slot that position in the marketplace? So right now we are definitely too low in comparison to other towns that are similar in size to us. And then second, this would change it also by making it a professional position and putting it on the professional scale. Then any person that ran for election subsequent, Anita has 28 years of experience. So I mean, we have a 10-step program, so she's well above 10 years of experience. But if when she retires, someone new comes in, then where do you slot that person? And I think by making it an M position, the M schedule, we have the ability to pick from 1 to 10 to be able to accomplish that, the steps.
So Chris, if we support this and vote this, ultimately it still goes to town meeting and they have to support it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's question 1, and then I would guess that Anita would just have to promise to stay 3 more years while we address the charter, right?
That'd be good.
Okay.
Yeah, just, I was asked at FinCom about why we weren't, or why I wasn't, personally, why wasn't I, as the administrator, considering this position to be appointed?
Okay.
That's not my role. That's a role that I believe is in the purview of the selectmen, that if you want to make a recommendation to look at that position, whether it should be elected or appointed, or even the charter review committee, that's someone else's labor. And then if directed, really what I was directed to do, and actually at a request of an employee, why can't I be looked at and be treated fairly like other employees?
Sure.
And that's really what we started off with this.
I'll start with Janelle.
I think it all sounds logical. I've always wondered why it was an elected position. I didn't ever really ask the question, I just wondered. I have nothing else.
Don?
This doesn't take it from being an elected position.
No, I know.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as far as that goes, there are communities that have elected ones, there are communities that have appointed ones, and there's no real relationship between that and the pay. What I have been concerned about for years is the contention that, well, we're trying to catch up on this position. And they always used to say with the road to where was paved with. Every year that same discussion would come up, and it never brought the position up to parity with the other professionals. Let's say this became an appointed position, which I'm not personally in favor of, because there's a certain amount of distance so that you don't own the town clerk. But let's say this was part of this. Sure. We would never have allowed this disparity to exist on the professional staff or the supervisors, the department heads. So, I mean, this is something that's a long time overdue. Charter doesn't actually codify the pay. It only talks about whether it's elected or not, what the duties are. So there's really nothing that has to happen there. It's the people's decision. They go on the town meeting floor and decide whether they do or don't, because it's part of its own article.
I just think what Chris mentioned is real. If two people run for the election and there's somebody with 1 year experience versus 20, and the 1 year gets elected, they should start at a lower grade.
And this
I
gives them a
definitely
structure.
support the lower grade. Julie?
Yeah, I would agree, and I don't have any questions. I mean, same as if you were working in the private sector and had years of experience, you'd be rewarded for it, and we're lucky that our town clerk does have that, so.
Larry?
I agree. It's good that it's graded now. I have no way at all want to discuss elected versus appointed. We have a lot on our table already.
Yeah, I know.
That's for another year, another forum maybe. It does bring me to the article, which is, because the article number, it deserves an explanation of why the town clerk is, and it has a range, because that's one thing I flagged just in the article language.
Yeah, that's a
But
good point.
I'm certainly for moving forward.
Thank you. Anita?
I just have one comment, and thank you very much. The position that I hold, thanks to the town, being elected for as many years as I have been elected, it is very unique. I am an elected official that runs a department. And so whether I'm a department head or I'm an elected official, I have that slash between both designations. I am an elected official that runs a department, so it makes it kind of difficult. So that's when I had asked, could this position please be looked at to slot it in the fact that it would be fair to someone to come in if the day comes that I should choose to resign.
After 3 years from now.
Thank you very much for your confidence.
One more. Thank you. One more.
One more term.
So just to be clear, Chris, before we go to motion on this, this is to, the only three positions our vote is to affect tonight is DPW Director, Support Staff Supervisor, and the Town Clerk.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
And just in the budget, there was a funding source that we had, so we did identify that. As town clerk had a separate amount of money for doing things. So we are using that to kind of help bridge until we can get her into the budget more fully in '20.
Okay. Can I get a motion? Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we accept the proposed redesignations of the DPW Director, the Town Clerk, and the Support Staff Supervisor, OA4, as proposed.
Is that good, Bob?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Bob, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. Before we go on to other old business, I'm going to bring up the storm. It just so happens tomorrow, the last emergency that we took to allow free brush disposal ends
Today's the last day of it.
today.
Mhm.
Last week's storm, as confirmed by DPW Director and as mentioned by Norm tonight, was just as bad, if not worse. So we have to declare it an emergency and invoke our policy. Can I get a motion on that?
I move that we declare that the last storm was an emergency and that we will invoke the policy once again for waiving of fees.
Second.
Waiving of fees for brush
removal.
yeah. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chris, so what would the date be from tomorrow until
I'm trying to remember, is it
the
7?
13th to the 26th? Tomorrow's for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Oh, not the
Tomorrow is
13th,
the 20th.
20th.
So from the 20th to
April 3rd.
April 3rd.
Okay.
Hoping that Thursday isn't a problem.
Thank you. Okay, old business, back tax collection status. And I think we have Amy.
Good evening. So last week, the FY16 taxes were leaned. So that amounted to about $26,000. Once those get leaned, I can subsequent anything FY17 that already has a tax lien account. That amounted to about $360,000. So you can kind of see how that snowballs. We did collect $583,000 in the past year. I think, so that's good. We collected more than we added, but I think a good part of that was because of the tax lien auction that had been advertised. A lot of those payment plans have fallen by the wayside. I did mention at the budget hearing, we've hired or engaged with a new attorney who specializes in tax liens. So she has actually started sending out letters to some of the homeowners. Right now, I ran a report today, there's 120 FY17 unpaid real estate taxes that were not subsequented because they don't previously have a tax lien account. So I will start sending out letters on those too.
Okay. And just, can you give just a little overview on this new attorney and the process so that people can
Yeah,
rest
so
assured?
she looked at the list. We went through the list together, and anybody that is in good standing with a previous payment plan, she's not going to address. But she is sending out letters she's starting with people who have homes, people like properties with houses on them, because she figures those are the best ones that will engage in a payment plan. She's encouraging them to contact her, and she will help them figure out a way of, making up a decent payment plan. Part of the problem with the ones that we have, they're so small, they're not making any headway. So she's really going to encourage some more better payment plans for them.
And I think it's important to note that this is the town doing the collection. We're not selling liens.
Right, exactly.
Hired someone who's
Exactly.
working for the
Yep.
town.
Yes, we just hired somebody to help us with it. Yep.
Okay. All right, Chris?
I do think, Mr. Chairman, obviously this is a significant issue. I think even when we met with her, she indicated that, we have a higher record of this than other places. I think we're trying to take kind of a three-prong approach, as you've been very supportive of, Mr. Chairman, looking at those issues such as the Judah Eldridge property and taking those where it makes sense to take those and have a mechanism to receive payment for some of those taxes and the value of the land to offset. I think Judah Eldridge by itself is over $400,000 in back taxes that are owed. The eminent domain on that is $369,000 that the town would receive once we secure the property by eminent domain, assuming town meeting votes that. So I think that's one approach. We do have on there too Lakeview, I think it's Lakeview Drive, where there are a couple properties where we would take those properties in lieu of foreclosure.
And that was recommended, Chris, by the property owner.
That was an
So
elderly
the public knows
property
we're not
owner.
taking their property.
That's right. And I think that that's something to get that tool out there to the general public so they're aware that there are folks that are in desperate straits that may be land wealthy but not income capable. So I think that where they do fall behind on taxes, this is another vehicle that we could use to do that. Jim Capola has also been, Attorney Capola has also been engaged where he has had some knowledge and work already, so he has engaged in kind of proceeding on those foreclosures that make sense for him to proceed on, and then this is the other avenue. So I think taking those multiple approaches based upon the different circumstances should hopefully help to weed that list down to a more marginal or reasonable level.
Questions and comments to Amy or Chris from the board?
Hey,
Larry?
A request, could we get, say, a quarterly update, you know, a summary, not the individuals, but just where you stand on
Sure.
new and old, and
Yep.
so we kind of keep track of it?
Yep.
Julie?
No, I don't have any questions.
Janelle?
Me neither.
Don?
Yeah, it's just a comment. I really appreciate you revisiting the whole thing as a clean sheet of paper, because this is really the direction I was hoping that we were taking. For anybody who thought we weren't interested in collecting any back taxes, it was really more based on a reticence to have a company that has a model that's more like, we'll make the town whole, but we'll take the house even though maybe it's only about 20% of the value of the house, and the homeowner gets left out in the dark. This is more reasonable. This is going to get people to make a payment plan. And I can assure the town, the whole board has always been interested in collecting what's owed to the town, because it's a bond with the rest of the citizens. But it wasn't supposed to be a mechanism so that somebody could cash in and start flipping houses. I appreciate the fact that this has been done this way.
And Amy and Chris, just one last, I think in Chris and I's meeting, we discussed that you guys picked a number of properties and gave that to her to start, and then we'll go to the next list. So was there about 28 properties, I think you told me?
I think she's
I
got
think
about
it's in that
28, yeah.
neighborhood, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the foreclosure ones, you know, that's a last resort, but in that case, the town will end up with that property, whether it be raw land or whether it be a house. The town will end up with that property. At
Right.
that point, we could auction it or turn it into open space. or
Exactly.
wastewater
Yeah, a
off-
couple of those are ones that the person has property down in Palm Beach that we have to send taxes to, but they can't pay their taxes up here, which seems a little ridiculous. So those ones we have paid special attention to, because we think that that deserves that. One other thing, though, that I just want to point out, that I've actually found, and I think, Amy, you know, it's amazing, some of these properties that where the tax records are versus where the land court says the property are two different things. And we are trying to navigate through those to make sure that we're not taxing property that may not be, you know, appropriate. So, and I do intend on kind of sitting down with the assessors and looking at, you know, how can we help to kind of clean some of these up. I don't necessarily think it's the assessors, it's certainly not the assessor's fault, but the the land court documents and the documents that are recorded at the registry of deeds are troublesome, I guess is probably the best way to put in some cases. They seem to be focused more on sand pits than other things, maybe because they don't have as many boundaries or reference points.
Meets and bounds.
But that's something that we are looking at, and that will take some time to work our way through.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Amy, for your efforts.
Thank you.
Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard Waystack, Chairman of the Board of Assessors. This is through you to Amy, if I can, that anyone on the new tax lien list, if anyone's a senior, the Commonwealth has a program available for deferrals for seniors deferring their taxes. And if anyone on that list is a senior, we'd like to become aware of it so that we can work with them to be able to defer their taxes. You know, it's a great mechanism for some of our seniors, and I try to get that plug out there as often as we can, rather than someone getting into a default position, that there's a great program that's out there that people can defer their taxes at simple interest, at 8% simple interests, and eventually either their family or their estate will pay off the taxes to the town. It's a great, great program, and I'd hate to see any senior in our community in a default position be potential having a default or a bankruptcy there, or a foreclosure that would take that property, when we do have programs that could benefit these seniors. So if the attorney could be made aware that anyone who's a senior to let us know, we will assist as best we can.
Amy, do you want to respond to that real quick?
I think the attorney will, when she's going to be working with these people, she's going to probably address that, because she's going to know their situations. I have no idea how old they are. You know, so.
And in some cases, and in a lot of cases, if memory serves me correct, we did vet out a lot of the seniors
Oh,
in
yeah.
in the last
Yeah.
round. So
Yeah.
Richard, just, Board of Assessors would like to be made aware. Chris, if we could just make sure they get some communication on any seniors.
I think that's very
Yeah.
reasonable.
Yeah, this attorney, I think, is gonna, you know, she knows more of the options for that are available to people, so I think it's gonna work out really well.
Great. Thank you, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, annual town meeting warrant. So it's on here tonight to vote to support. Larry mentioned it to me prior to the meeting, and I agree with him. Some of the ones that are numbers specific, Finance Committee hasn't voted. There's a list of what they have voted in front of us. Other ones that have to do with money, I'm not comfortable voting on until Finance Committee weighs in. So if we want to kind of go through these.
Yeah, I was going to exactly suggest that, Mr. Chairman. I did attend the Finance Committee last Thursday evening, and they did vote on several ones. Some of them are kind of more procedural, but they made it through Article 24. They voted on all except for the elected officials. I was glad they agreed to wait to see the discussion tonight and see how that went. So they will take that back up. The town operating budget, they wanted to see what the final numbers came in at that, so that they wanted to defer. Monomoy, I think they wanted to see if there was any potential additional reductions or adjustments that could be made. But then they voted everything else except for 9 and 10 are capital items and facility maintenance funds. Both of those are financial, but they made it all the way through 24 with those, I think there's 5 exceptions.
So if I call out the article, maybe I can get a motion to support, and that's all we're doing tonight. We don't have to do the accept and adopt.
That's already in
It's
there.
already been done. Everything that's before us is going into the warrant. We already voted the final warrant. So we're only voting our support.
Okay.
And when I call out the article, if somebody wants to just make a motion,
I'll do it.
Larry will make the motion. Can we get one person that makes a second? So we can,
Yeah,
Don
I
will
will
make
do
the seconds. And this is to whether or not the Board of Selectmen supports the article. And that's it. So, start with number 1, Larry.
I move we support Article 1, which I don't have that in front of me.
It's just
That's
the,
all you gotta say,
it's
right?
just
Do it
the
right off
adoption
this
of the
list.
officers
Oh,
and
town
committees.
officers
And committees.
and committees.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to support Article number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Move we support Article 2, reports of town officers and committees.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 2. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Move we support Article 6, which is Cape Cod Regional Transportation.
Tech
Thank
school.
you.
Regional
School,
technical
sorry.
school.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to support Article 6, the Cape Cod Regional Technical School budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 7, Larry.
Yeah, I'm just going to be sure. I
The
get
water
that.
department budget is
The,
also funded by water revenues, so I think they felt comfortable going forward with that.
Give me a second here to catch up. Move we support Article 7, the water budget.
Second. Since
Janelle
Dawn-
seconded that. Okay.
Dawn
Any
wasn't
any
fast enough.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move we support Article 8, adopt the capital plan.
Second.
Discussion.
No.
So, Chris, I have a question on this. Capital plan, I want to say I agree with Dana DeCosta a little bit on this. It's a revolving capital plan. Well, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with everything in the capital plan, and because it's a 7-year capital plan.
I thought the, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman, I thought the point that he was making is that I keep, so I can make sure that everything gets funded that gets requested or what is gonna be, so we have that as an appendix. One of the things that I thought he was objecting to is that I had put things in there that were under 50,000, which is inconsistent with the charter. The charter does say capital plan needs to be items over 50,000 that the capital outlay committee vet. I took all those out, so this is a refined version that is, I believe, more compliant with the charter.
Okay.
And it really is just a plan, it's just a request, it's not an adoption that these things are gonna be funded.
And I guess that's my point. I don't want to jump out and say that I agree with everything in the capital plan.
It's
over the
just that a
next 5
capital
to
plan
7
has been
years.
prepared, that's
Okay.
really the way I
Okay, that's fine.
visualize that.
Any other discussion? Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that point, I'm willing to support it this year but I don't know why it got changed as a charter change. It's incoherent at this point. It's not just a plan for us to plan. It's a plan for everybody out there to know what they're facing over the next 10 years. And it's become anarchy, because you could just unplug something and put something in there. There was a mechanism to do that. I mean, you could have a two-thirds vote at town meeting, so if something was compelling to move up on the plan, you could do that. But the way it is right now, it's not much of a plan, because we're not really being held by it. Every year, it's a new plan. So the people who own houses need to know that they're facing a somewhat level plan, and there's some sort of coherent way to adjust it. This year, that's not happening.
Okay.
So if this comes up next year, I really would like it to be in combination with changing the charter back to a real plan, that there's a mechanism to pull something out and move it up or down, but you take more than a majority vote. It takes a two-thirds vote to do that.
It's been requested to put that on the agenda in the near future, so I will do
Good.
that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. 8? Oh, we just did.
We just did 8.
You just
We're
did
to
8.
11 now.
Yeah.
Support Article 11 is fund the snow and ice deficit for fiscal year 18.
Yeah,
Second.
that was to not recommend pending further information because we don't know when it's gonna stop snowing. So on 11 and 12,
Okay,
both of those
postpone that.
requests were, let's wait till just
Okay.
before town meeting, we'll have a better
I'll
sense.
withdraw that motion then, and I'll move
I'll
to
withdraw my second.
support Article 13, rescind amounts in long-term debt.
I don't know, does the Board of Selectmen, sorry, do you guys normally vote the NF, the not,
We have,
I think that you have actually done that in the past.
Don?
we're typically posted on town meeting nights even, to be able to come together with finance committee positions, so there's no real urgency to come up
Yeah,
with a
no,
recommendation
I
tonight.
just didn't know whether you guys did that or not.
Okay.
Okay, so we're,
But-
13, sorry.
13, and that's been moved and seconded. Don, you did second that,
I did.
correct? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. 15?
Move to 15 then. Move to accept Article 15, which is the,
Waters.
there's the Dennis Harwich Yarmouth.
Clean Water
it's a
Community
Clean Water
Partnership.
Program.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 15. All in favor? Aye, thank you.
Move support of Article 16, sewer, to create a sewer enterprise fund.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 16. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Support Article 17, which is Lower County Road Project for fiscal year 18.
This is water revenue that
Water
we're funding.
revenue.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 17. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Continuing was water-funded articles. I move we support Article 18, which is repave access roads to well sites.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 18. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Move support Article 19, purchase utility trucks for the water department, funded by the Water Enterprise Fund.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 19. Any discussion? Julie, we talked briefly about this before the meeting, and this is, just to point out, this one is funded by the Water
Water,
Enterprise
right.
Fund,
Water
so it's not
revenues.
the other
Right,
vehicles.
yeah.
Correct.
No, I don't have it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move we support Article 20, which is reappropriation of bond proceeds. This again is bonding that the water department has previously in place, and now they're moving them.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 20. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move support Article 21.
Larry, I'm gonna ask you to hold off on this one.
Okay.
This is funded from our own money, and this
Money,
is
yeah.
one of the money ones. that
From
was
free cash.
From
From
free
free
cash,
cash.
right.
Okay.
Road maintenance program, Chris?
That's a debt exclusion, the one we've historically done at the 700,000 level.
Okay. Go ahead on Article 20.
Move support Article 22, road maintenance program.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve Article 22, road maintenance program. Any discussion?
As Chris says, this has been a standing article forever, trying to maintain the roads. So.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See,
The next two are the fire department related.
Yep.
You wanna move ahead
Go
on
ahead with
those?
those.
Any
Go ahead.
objection?
I'm okay with going forward with those.
Move we support Article 23, purchase new replacement ambulance, $340,000,
Free cash.
free cash.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 23, ambulance purchase, and that's revolving, Chris, we do that every year?
Every 3 years.
Every
I
other
think.
year,
Every other
replace
year.
an ambulance.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that catches us up then with the
Now,
finance.
the next one, just in terms of the finance committee, because bids are due in, the only reason why they did not vote was they wanted to see what the actual number was gonna be when the bids come in, because the bids are anticipated to be in just before town meeting for the fire station project.
Okay. Just before. So we can vote this now, or we could wait till just before. We don't, I think
Which one are
we
you
vote-
talking about?
The
25?
Fire Station 2,
24 is the
24.
station.
We've all supported Fire Station 2.
I move we support Article 24, construction of Station 2, with the actual numbers being submitted.
$6,050,000, so anything less than $6,050,000.
So do I have a second on that? Okay, it's seconded. Discussion. Jack?
My suggestion would be that since we really should be having these numbers, and they're going to come in late, that you should maybe consider doing what we're doing, which is not recommended, pending further information.
Right. Yeah, on this article, I think, I agree, because we don't have a bid. So, and I think that you
We
said
could-
pending.
Pending the bid, yeah. So we can do that.
Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Jack, but I do want to take every opportunity because people may or may not be paying attention to this. Fire department did what they did based on the rules that did exist during that time. They patiently waited for this to come up to what they thought was year one in the capital plan. And this fire building is really old, it's really tired, they're busting at the seams in terms of calls. We anticipated that. We actually invited that with the first comprehensive plan by encouraging Fontaine to locate here. And at some point or another, you got to be able to say, we've got a community that's growing, it's thriving, and that these people are really servicing what's arguably the fastest growing part of town. And we've made a promise. I mean, eventually we got to do this one way or the other. So I'm happy enough to hold off, but I'm just saying that of all of the things in the world, there are wants, there are needs. This is a need.
I think the way we've stated it, it doesn't exceed the.
$6,050,000.
$6,050,000, we can move ahead.
$6,050,000, and that's a debt
I'm comfortable with
exclusion.
that.
I'm comfortable with that too.
And then we can revote.
Could
We
be
can
down.
bring it back if,
Yeah.
okay. So you're going to add that number into the
I am.
motion?
And I
And
seconded
seconded
that
that? Okay, great. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Larry, let's jump down to, I think 25 we can do. I mean, there's no reason we can't, some of the ones that aren't numbers related, there's
Yeah,
no reason we can't go
actually, the thing
through.
I was gonna suggest is you wanna go back to number 3, because they didn't take an action because they didn't vote on the elected officials, but you guys just made a decision on the elected officials, so do you wanna vote that salary schedule for
I'm not comfortable
number
with it
3?
yet.
I thought, yeah, and I thought.
The only
based-
one that's in there is the town clerk.
Oh, they didn't come forward on the, I
No,
know
they
they were
did.
still talking about selectmen's salary.
Oh,
Yeah, they
it's
changed
It is
the
actually-
in there,
one.
they changed the
Yeah,
salary.
that's true.
And I don't want to
Okay.
opine if they're
I'll,
not.
I'll,
Right, I thought we had said at our meeting on Saturday that we were gonna have that discussion.
Right. We're still going to have a discussion with Finance Committee, so.
okay.
So Larry, I'd take number 25.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I move we support 25 with transfer of land for Island Pond Cemetery.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Larry, jump down to 27.
Move we support 27 cemetery commission rules and regulations amendments.
Second.
These are fairly, not many of them, they're pretty self-explanatory, I
Yep.
think.
I agree.
Didn't study them.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I'd take 28 is golf, correct?
28 and 29 are both funded by golf
By golf.
revenues,
Okay,
so-
I move we support 28 landscape reclamation and major tree removal.
Paid for out of golf funds?
Golf funds, yep.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion?
Only that along with 29, not only improve the looks of the course, but they minimize the amount of disease we get, and so we're trying to be a green community, and these reduce the amount of pesticides used on those in irrigation. So they're beneficial both to the golfer and to our desire to be a green community.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to support 29, Article 29, Phase 2, completion of landscaping, again paid for by the golf revenues.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 29. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Article 30.
This is to accept the
Accept the
grant
grant.
for
Grant.
Sacotucket and allow for.
I move we accept Article, because we're going to do this, I move we accept the Article 30, which accept the grant for the Sacotucket land site.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 30 to accept the grant at Sacotucket Landside. Just to point out to the public, this doesn't mean we're spending it, it's still their decision. We are recommending, I think, that
Bill's on the
we're moving forward, and the explanation says that we're accepting the grant, and you can either move forward or offset the debt.
But the support
doesn't.
would be to go to a new total of 4 million, 3 million previously authorized, and 1 million by the grant.
That's the selectmen support. Town
That's the
meeting
selectmen.
still decides what they want to do with it,
No,
How they apply the money.
how they apply the money.
no.
Right, but you would make a recommendation to town meeting that you are in favor of going to that 4 million or not.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
But they can decide at town meeting. that they don't.
Absolutely.
Right. That's the only thing I was pointing out. Any discussion on this?
Yes.
Janelle?
So this is the one that reads funny to me. The way I interpret this after much discussion the last time is that a yes vote authorizes the 1 million to be in addition to the 3 million. So a
Correct.
yes vote, and that is the way it reads, correct?
That's
So
the intent.
by saying yes to Article 30, the voter needs to know that they are automatically adding the 1 million to the 3 million. They don't get a choice. It's a yes or a no. It's not like, oh, yes, we accept the grant. Now we get to choose where it goes. You see what I'm saying? A yes means we've already accepted the grant. So as I said before, I don't think that word should have been left in there because it's very confusing. So this article actually, to paraphrase it, is that we allow the Board of Selectmen to add the 1 million grant to the already appropriated 3 million that was voted last year.
Correct.
Correct.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one thing we're probably missing, and I hate guessing when it comes down to what the town moderator might do because it's his town meeting, not ours, but I'm suspicious that he would allow an amendment to this if somebody did it, because it's more restrictive, not less restrictive, where somebody said accept the grant but don't apply it to additional debt, apply it to buying down what we already have spent.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that would be within the scope of the article. It wouldn't be in the reverse if you tried to spend it somewhere above what we're designating. So I don't see any harm in putting this out as accepted, because if we yank it, say, or if we do indefinite postponement, then we're nowhere. Because this calls for two things: calls for accepting a grant, calls for applying the money in a particular place. So I agree with Janelle, but I also agree that at town meeting, somebody could probably make a motion if it really bothers them that this is going to be accepted but applied where they don't want it, that they could make an amendment to say, we'll take the money, but we're not going to apply it to anything new and additional. We're just going to buy down what we've already built and borrowed. I don't see any harm in that.
Chris, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to follow the logic. You know, it is kind of interesting because it really is the moderator's call. And in
We
my
may wanna ask
opinion, I think it's pretty, we have it constructed where, especially in the explanation, so the legislative intent is clear, that we don't have money to do the snack shack, we don't have money to finish the project, this finishes the project. We need $4 million to do it, this article gets us there. A no vote would mean we want you to downsize the project, no snack shack, and just keep it within 3 million. So I think that that's a pretty clear, definitive for town meeting.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I agree with Janelle. It's not that clear because it looks, in just plain English, that we're doing two things. We're accepting the grant by vote of town meeting and applying it in a particular way. It's not just applying it. I mean, if we don't do anything, it looks like we're capped at 3 million and we're not taking the million. We've already taken the million. I mean, and this is a validation by town meeting to accept the million into the project. Whether that means into the completed full project as voted last year, or whether it's an augmentation of the amount that was done so that the whole, you know, it could be finished, is the only thing that's up for grabs in an amendment. But we really need to accept the grant if it's written that way. It seems to be written that way, that we're accepting it on the one hand, and we're applying it in a particular direction in the same article. It's more than one action. I mean, and I think that's what you were saying.
Yes,
Jack?
for weeks.
I think we need to make sure we've got a solid estimate on this project before we proceed. My suggestion is make sure that we have that before we decide to vote on this, like I said before. And I think the second thing is, we had a $3 million project. Now we have $1 million. The tendency might be on some people's minds, well, it's a $4 million project now. No, it's a $3 million project, plus we have some money from $1, 3 million one to 4 million. And let's make darn sure that just because we've got $1 million, we just don't, do something with it we might want to regret later on.
And just to be clear, we have, Chris and I did speak, and I know Chris and John have spoken. We do intend to get an estimate on the overages, and we do intend to get a separate estimate on the snack shack,
Yeah.
so that we know that we're in that range.
Good. I
And
think
in my
that's
mind,
crucial.
we got a $1 million gift from the state, and town meeting voted a project last year that included certain things.
Right.
And we are voting to support the concept that town meeting supported last year, in my mind.
Okay.
Chris, do you want to
Yeah.
do any further research on the language questions they do? Are you comfortable with?
Yeah, I don't think I can really change the language,
It's
because
done.
we've said, I probably could adjust the explanation, but I think I think the explanation is
I think the explanation is clear.
pretty
Chris.
straightforward.
Can we ask the town administrator to talk with the moderator to see what types of motions, amendments might be in order?
Yeah, if I can get a hold of them and have a discussion, I'm
All right,
happy
so
to do that.
I can bring this one back next
The
week.
moderator, yeah, about what he would accept.
I can bring this one back.
We
next
have a
week.
motion on the
withdraw
table.
my
Yeah,
second.
I know.
we're
I
good.
I withdraw
Okay.
the second.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on the motion, just bring it
Okay.
back.
All right, so this comes back next week. And just for clarification,
Now, 31, Article 31, Michael and Chris, that's
No
is this on here
elementaries.
with this IP, we'll take this IP?
so this has been changed. The school committee voted to remove all discussion about elementary schools.
Right, that's what I was wondering why it was on
And this is
here.
just house cleaning now, the other changes that we voted to support minus the elementary school.
Okay, so we'll go ahead with this without the elementary school.
There
So
were
you'll
certain
clean
things
this
in the
up.
agreement, they didn't, like an example,
Chatham
they didn't have
goes down,
Monomoy in there, because
yeah.
they hadn't picked the name, so it's more,
So I have been through this, and all the language about the elementary school is.
It's gone, okay. Well, if that's the case, then I'll go ahead and move Article 31, Monomoy Regional Agreement Amendments.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 31. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You want to do 32?
32, I move we support Article 32, amend the Code of Harwich General Bylaws, Chapter 115, Stretch Energy Code.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve Article 32. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
33 is the ground-mounted photovoltaic.
Pardon?
33 is
33
also
is the
about.
ground-mounted photovoltaic related to green
Yeah.
communities.
I move we support Article 33, zoning bylaw article, large-scale ground-mounted photovoltaic arrays.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 33. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Chris, these marijuana ones, why
Why did, yeah.
pending further information?
Yeah, I think that the FinCom, and certainly Jack's here, I think they were looking for more additional information, to maybe have the town planner or somebody kind of walk them through what the intent of these are.
Okay.
There may be a difference of opinion from what the board is looking for versus what FinCom is looking for, so I don't know if you want to delay, or how you
Well,
want to
in my mind, we voted these.
Yeah.
We had a lot of conversations, so I'd accept a motion on 34 through 37, since they're all related to marijuana.
Yeah, I don't need to repeat those. I'll say, so moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to support Articles 34, 35, 36, and 37. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank
I
you.
move we support 38.
Hang on one second, Larry, because these are all charter changes down to,
Right. Which we've all discussed, but you'd rather.
down to 44. So why don't we do a motion from 38 to 44?
Okay.
Go ahead, Don.
Mr. Chair, if I might, if in the motion you can include that you vote to support it and to refer it to the Charter Committee for hearings, because it's a requirement in the charter that that happens, we have to refer.
Okay.
Well, if that's the case, why don't we postpone it and get that referral back then?
No,
'Cause
it's just as to form and numbering, but it has to be referred back to them because the charter deals with any change in the charter, any change in the bylaws, has to have a hearing and a
No,
report.
I understand
to town
that,
I mean,
but there's
just
no
to that
urgency
point,
from our
though,
part.
Fine with supporting it. I mean, we've supported
We've
these
supported
already.
it.
We have already, that's what
Yeah.
I started with.
So we're just,
And to refer it, that's all
When-
I'm asking.
But just on the referral, when you guys voted the final warrant, we sent it to, saying that these are now been approved by the board for them to hold their hearings.
Okay,
So
so it's
we
been
have,
referred?
we've done that, yeah.
okay, so just voting
Okay.
to support.
Okay, move to support Article 38 through 43,
44.
44,
Second.
which all charter changes.
Moved and seconded to support Article 38 through 44 related to charter changes. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move we support Article 44, which is decommission the
No,
architect.
we already did that one. 45.
Oh, I did that?
Yeah.
Okay. And
45
Go to
is the,
45.
Yeah. just need to-
45 is the town-owned property of 4 Central Ave. This
Right,
is just
which-
taken by eminent domain to
Yeah.
clean the title.
I move we support Article 45.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 45. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Move to-
Opposed?
Aye.
4-1, Chris.
4-1.
Move support Article 47, which is 70 Willow Street, town property, clear title, and revised boundary line.
Sorry, let him finish 47.
Wait,
Okay, can I get a
boundary
second
lines?
on 47?
Sure, second.
Okay, moved and seconded to support Article 47. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you do 46?
No, we
too?
did.
I skipped
We're
46.
I want to make sure.
We're
And now do
circling back.
46.
I move we support 46 with deeds acceptance, accepted in lieu of foreclosure, 31-33 Lakeville Drive.
This is, we discussed this,
We-
okay, moved and seconded discussion. This is the one we discussed earlier. This was voluntary from the homeowner. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
I move we support Article 48, reserve for future appropriation amounts from fiscal year 18 Community Preservation Fund, estimated annual revenues. And this is mainly just customary of
Yeah, it's
10%
paying off the
of
land
the
bank.
different phases, yeah.
not
Yeah,
that
I'm sorry, that's right, 10% of each one.
10% of recreation is,
Yes,
we have to,
customary
we have to
article.
every year.
Okay, moved and seconded. Article 48, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Move support Article 49, which is this one, Chris, you're talking about, is pay off
sorry.
Yep.
land bank debt service.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 49, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. We could do the CPCs as a block since we've all voted to support those unless anyone disagrees.
I agree.
I move we support Articles 50
58.
Through 59.
through 59. They're all CPC articles.
59 is for the, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, 58.
Do it
58.
Second on that one?
Second. I'm paying
Okay, moved and
attention.
seconded to support CPC Articles 50 through 58. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, thank you. 59, Claire?
I move we support Article 59, which defray costs for the Chase and Harwich libraries.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 59. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move we support Article 60, to promote the town of Harwich
Second.
for, what was the dollar amount of that?
35.
It was
5,000.
25, we moved it up to 35.
35.
30,000 is the number.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 60. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Move support Article 61, supplement annual allocation of Mass Cultural Council for local cultural, whatever the rest of that is.
And that was in the amount of $3,000.
3,600.
3,600.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to support Article 61 in the amount of $3,600. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The next
62 and 60.
Pleasant Bay
62 and
Alliance.
63 are Pleasant Bay Alliance. I would move Article 62 and 63.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to support Article 62 and 63. There's no money associated with those.
No, in either case.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move we support Article 64, which is the annual revolving fund authorization.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support Article 64. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Move we
Go ahead, Don.
On the middle school, and somebody actually asked me this question, funding restorations, maintenance, care, and support in the middle school, and that's going through DPW?
Chris?
It's going through the community center director and facility manager.
Okay, so just to get this clear though, if that's for, you know, maintenance, care, and support, it goes through them, but if Sean has to be involved with something, what happens?
They work cooperatively, so if a boiler needs to be fixed, then Sean actually governs the use of it.
That's kind of
Yes,
what was
yes,
driving.
one
I
person.
want everybody to know that.
Yeah,
there's-
one person.
Okay.
Larry, I'd like to skip 65, 66, and 67.
Okay. I move articles, we support Article 68, which is fund prior year's unpaid balance.
Second.
Well, I was gonna say, you may wanna,
Yeah, we need
you may wanna
need a
wait
number
just in
further
case
information.
anything else comes up.
Okay.
All right, we'll skip.
Let me move
Do the Harris
to,
fishery zone.
I'm gonna move we support Article 69. If this is controversial, I'm gonna walk out of the room. This is the herring fisheries,
Second.
traditional.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on. Chris, Town Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things this evening, or several things. The DHY Clean Waters meeting, Community Clean Waters meeting, just that's something that the board members are going to attend March 22nd, which is Thursday night at 6 p.m. at the Dennis Council on Aging. It is intended, you did vote support of that initiative, but they would be looking for a vote at the end. That came up on Friday's meeting. We had a meeting over in Dennis about this topic. Talking about it. I think Commissioner Suberg is going to be there, so I think that there's a lot of state support for the efforts that are being made by the communities moving in this positive direction.
Let me just repeat what you said, Chris. Because we voted on it, we obviously support it. But since it's a three-town meeting, and we want it to be a publicly supportive of a regional effort for various reasons. And so we'll vote basically the same thing
Just ask you
again.
to
but it'll be
reaffirm
part
the
of
vote you made tonight.
But we need to post.
It's been
It's been
posted
posted, I
for
think.
that and posted for the Friday morning session in case people want to go to Friday morning. The Friday morning.
Don's got a question.
Yep, Mr. Chair, just in general, I mean, because I think everybody would agree to this, if there's a potential for anything like this, as a workshop that we might want to go to, like, I know a couple of us went to the housing workshop. I think it's just a wise idea. If it's in our packet, there's something of regional interest, it's likely that selectmen are going to go to. We should just post in general.
Yeah, if you could let us know.
Because it's
if
not a coincidence
we
that
don't
we're
wanna
running
post
into each other
everything
at that
if
point.
no one goes, but if a few people are planning on going.
Get in a
So
lot more trouble
Thursday and
the other
Friday
way.
we'll post.
Yeah, we have posted for Thursday and Friday. Friday is just the special meeting for managers and selectmen and superintendents of the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, just to kind of do update and plans of the future. That's Friday, March 23rd, starts at 8:30, ends at 10:45, Cape Cod Technical High School in Harwich. Then one here that I have is, I did, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you sent an email there was some concern about the Saquatucket bulkhead. I asked John, I had called John and asked him to look at it. He did get reports, or not reports, but the evaluation of 3 different parties. We put that in the packet. I know you asked for the specific report, so we could dig that up and put that in. I just kind of wanted to at least put this on the table, that we're aware that there was an issue and we are in the process of looking. If you want to have a more formal discussion on it, we can certainly do that. I think reading the professionals' material, it appears that a decision was made that some of this work they thought would last. I think they validated it would last, and instead of adding money to a project to address something that may last 10 years, they decided to defer as related to this project. And when I say this project, I should say the Saquotucket Waterside portion of that project.
Don?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. For those people who may be listening or are a little confused on social media, there was a former harbor master was talking about the condition of the bulkheads on that media. I'm just concerned that when we get down into the nitty gritty here, that we get more than a verbal. I'd like signed reports from the engineers so that they are winding up having some exposure to if they make a mistake and there's a whoops that happens.
I think there was questions brought up from a few citizens, and they asked for reports. John has provided us with some of the information.
Yep.
I clarified with John today one piece of information that was asked for that we didn't get. Chris is working on getting that, put it in the packet so the full board was aware of it. Chris is looking at it. John and Chris are talking about it. If there's a reason to bring it back, we will bring it back, but that the reports will be added to the agenda, and if a board member wants to have a conversation about this, I'll agenda it.
Mr. Chair, will those be actually from an engineer signed?
Yeah, there's one apparently from Bourne Consulting and one apparently from Coastal, so we're working.
Some of those reports, were done several years ago, several years ago, so we could get things signed. I think if we want to have signed documentation for now, now we're asking for a little different than an evaluation and a write-up. We're asking for, like a feasibility. There may be a little bit of an additional cost related to that. The material I looked at was fairly convincing that there's no imminent problem. And if people on social media, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to go here. If people on social media want to talk about something that should have been addressed 20 years ago, perhaps they should have addressed it 20 years ago. And, John and I have been handed an awful lot of work to do to bring the harbors up to speed. And, we've done our best to do that and to, bring a lot of years of neglect up to date.
Well, without speculating, and I'll let Julie talk in a minute, without speculating, the reports are already created. Let's just put our eyes on the reports.
Yes.
And then we'll go from there. There's no problem yet. The problem has been created by a few people talking. I appreciate what we already have, and that certainly looks great. Let's just look at the reports. Julie?
Oh, the documentation also referenced that many of the piers in that area of the bulkhead are in absolutely perfect order, that they've also created the dock system so that when repairs are needed to be made down the road, they have the ability to do that without disrupting. So all of that was looked at. So to that point, I think it's true. People need to really be looking at this comprehensively and reading the documentation that's out there already, never mind the additional stuff we're asking for. The same way with the puddle comments. That information was given to us ahead of time. We were aware of how everything was going to be going about there in terms of digging. We weren't going down far. We were lifting things out of the flood zone. So before people start to make comments on things, I think they really need to go and look at what's already available for them to read.
Well, in fairness, that just became available today.
No, but I'm saying the other information, so.
Larry, any comments?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
I still have a few more.
Go ahead.
Just in terms of the Saquotucket Harbor, we did have a discussion today, just so the board is aware. We believe that under the contract that has been already issued, the $239,000, we could do kind of a tight tank and get us through this season, and then we'll have to go back and do the finish work. Because we're not sure what the status of the snack shack's going to be, it doesn't make sense to do the full septic system. So we are putting enough tanks in so we can run the piping to kind of go to holding tanks anyway, and we'll just pump out this year. And then after town meeting, we can finish that project. So just so there's no board action that's needed, we'll just phase that work so we can kind of get that work started and done and get through the season and then finish the work at the end of the year.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure, the Board of Health and the Health Director are on board with the tight tanks?
Actually, we've had discussions with the Board of Health Director. She actually, I believe, brought it up to the Board of Health tonight at 6:30, so I'm not sure, because I've been here, what the outcome is, but she's bringing it to them for that
I only bring that up because
consideration.
we don't have the authority to actually install them unless they're approved by the
Yes.
Board of Health.
It's really just, we're not going anything outside of what we've already been authorized to do. We're just phasing it as opposed to doing it all at once.
Right, just to be clear, you're not doing it unless Board of Health or Megan says you can.
Absolutely. And then I did pass out at People's Places this evening, just some of the wastewater questions. Actually, Megan presented this the other night to was it last Thursday night, too? Revisions. So some of the questions that Don had brought up, I just want to, I'll give him credit because I think some of these questions are quite honestly questions that other people would have. So just to kind of summarize these, and we do have Phase 2 sewer project, frequently asked questions that include this material. But hardship delays possible, the answer is yes, but they have to seek it from the Board of Health. How long do they have the authority to grant? It will be dependent upon when they submit to the Board of Health what their circumstance is. That will probably drive that. If the septic system is failing, do I need to replace now? If not, what needs to happen? Petition the Board of Health by regulation and set up a plan for addressing the failing system and pending the new sewer. And can I get a sewer loan on top of my most recent county loan? I did put in a fairly detailed call on Thursday and got a fairly detailed answer back that yes, you can have both.
Great.
So when he comes out to the meeting, hopefully he will reinstate and restate that, but I did get that from him in a phone message. And I just put in a new septic system last year, and do I have to take it out or be disposed? It is kind of interesting that the town of Chatham has health regulations, which we will have our Board of Health look at to see whether they want to adopt. The Chatham Board did take the stance that if you had a system that removed nitrogen, i.e. helping the situation, they gave you a little bit more time. If you had a system that did not remove nitrogen, i.e. a regular septic system, they didn't give much time. But if people had financial concerns or other pressing issues, they were willing to listen to for that measure. So those are in there and documented.
Don's got a question on that?
Yeah. First of all, I appreciate you pursuing this because, as I said, it's been going on for years and years, and it's about time we get some answers. I just want to take 2 minutes to understand why I'm all exercised over this, because this really boils down to a town that's got that's experienced a turnover probably over the last 10 years, where there's an awful lot of people who have retired here on 401ks and whatever. This is their retirement. I have been talking to a lot of people who are generational, who've been here as the Nickersons, Eldridges, Dones, Smalls, people who've grown up here. One woman particularly said, I had to take in sewing, I had to do this, my husband had to have 3 jobs. We don't have a 401k. We have a house. We're land rich in the community's eyes, but we don't have much in the way of assets. In fairness, we as a board owe these people, I mean, we can't just always look at this as an engineering endeavor. We owe these people an explanation, because this is about their entire lives. It's about their property, and it's about their ability to live out the rest of their lives. We've talked about workforce housing for younger people to stay here. We can't neglect the senior community here that may or may not be able to afford to retain their home once you lather on the cost of the betterment for their property, the cost of the yearly hookup, and the fact that they've got to pay their pro rata share of the whole system as it gets built. These people can't be left behind. Somebody's got to be looking out for them. And that's the only reason that I've been exercising. It's not that I didn't understand that we got sued, we entered into a consent decree and all of that, but that doesn't mean that we don't owe people answers. There's 2 things going on. We have to honor our agreement, but we have to find answers to things that are answerable. We can't just keep punting and say, well, next month we'll find that out.
Well, I'll speak for me, and then Chris has got his hand up. I don't think anyone took your questions that way. And I will tell you, from somebody that's attended wastewater meetings for 2.5 years now, and asked a lot of questions and watched a lot of people spend a lot of time, my statement last week was simply, we are doing the best we can, and we are continuing to do the best we can. And the more people in the public that want to get involved, we need you, we want you, we get it. But by no means is anyone dragging their feet on this. Then that's where I'll leave that. Chris, go ahead.
So just two last things. Number one, of the last two, April 19th, we have scheduled a date. I appreciate the community center is available for that follow-up meeting to the southern section of the Pleasant Bay watershed. So, and I think we will do a financial component to kind of lay out some of these things. We'll have a health component as well to kind of get some of these questions on the table and make sure we're articulating those. April 19th at 6:30 is the date that we have for that.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I don't always do this, but I had an opportunity. I took my son, he's off on break, and we went over to the South Harwich Meeting House. I got into that first presentation of the music. I thought the music was excellent. I was up on the balcony, and kind of a little bit rushed, so I had just a chance to kind of go in and come out. So I didn't really mingle, not that I'm a big mingler to begin with, but we did go in, and actually, what a fabulous venue for a thing. I was shocked at the number of people, pleasantly surprised by the number of people. So it's nice to see a project kind of come to fruition and have really positive outcome. And we enjoyed ourselves. I think my son enjoyed himself too. 24 years old, so they don't always enjoy things. But
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we should have our meetings there. Larry, Selectmen's report.
I'll miss next Monday's meeting.
Julie,
I don't have any.
Janelle,
I'll miss next Monday's meeting as well.
Don.
I'll miss Janelle and Larry at next week's meeting.
Well, I'm going to Florida with the grandkids.
And I can see, for those folks who were in that same circumstance, it was a lonely 19th century world there for a couple of days.
Where?
No electricity, no cell phones, no landlines, no heat. Transistor radio worked.
I was,
Tough week.
I'll conclude by thanking our public safety, Carolyn from the community center, the tech school. I concur with Norm. These crews from that Eversource brought in to help from Mississippi and Indiana and everywhere else. They left their families to help us. Our public safety people, I know on the police department side, they held over a shift at the worst of it, and they went with the fire department, door to door, pulling elderly people out and bringing them to safety. I know that several of those people left their own families to do so. Norm Clark specifically called me 4 or 5 times to keep me in the loop on what was going on, and that I appreciate. Our DPW, down to the last plow driver, I want to say, I don't want to exaggerate, took their lives in their hands, but they really did. There was down power lines everywhere, and they were out. Norm dispatched a crew with a chainsaw and one of our brush trucks just to clear trees out of the road to keep them open. I listened to the scanner before I lost power, and it was mayhem. Power poles down in the road, trees down in the road, things catching on fire when they were popping the circuits back on. But over and above, Norm, and all the public safety people in this town. And neighbors helping neighbors. So, thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned.